Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of my 1929 Ford Roadster. If you're new here, I'm Zach. Thank you so much for tuning in, and welcome to Wilson Builds. Today, we're working on wiring. So to have wiring and the 29 Roadster in the same sentence is pretty surreal because when I build, I always leave the wiring to very last. So the fact that we're tackling it must mean this car is getting very, very close. So realistically, it's going to be a pretty simple wiring job because I am not doing that much. I'm not doing turning signals. I'm not doing high beams. Anything that doesn't need to be there is not going to be there, if that makes any sense. So let's jump right into it and yeah, let's get wiring this thing. All right guys, so full disclosure before we start the video, I learned everything from this video from Lee Grant's YouTube channel, LG Speed and Custom. These two videos really paved the way for me to wire my vehicle, so I take no credit for anything that I'm doing today besides, stripping and soldering and so on and so forth. If you are looking to wire your hot rod, please don't use this video as a guide. Please go to my description below and go to Lee Grant's two videos he put out. One being kind of the basic wiring, getting your fuse panel together, and the other is lights and so on and so forth. And they're really informative, really professional, and really easy to follow. So go check them out, and you can stay and watch this video if you like. I mean, it's greatly appreciated. So, but I'm serious. Go check out his videos if you're looking to hot rod or looking to wire your hot rod, because those are the ones you should be following. Okay, so we have our battery where we want it, I believe, in a good, decent spot. It's going to be enough away from our side panels, so I'm not worried about that. Now we just have to drill our holes for our battery cables. And usually what I do to fasten the battery is I'll put, say, a piece of ready rod here and a piece of ready rod here, and then put a piece of flat bar on top of it across it to fasten it. And I think that's exactly what we're going to do in this scenario as well. Whether we put it across this way, I'm not too sure yet, but that's probably what we'll do in the end here. So we got to cut away these little panels. All right, so we got our holes now. Now we have to get our hole saw, and I'm going to do a little bit bigger than these guys so the grommets can actually sit kind of nicely, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so you can see that this is a little bigger. And that's because when the carpet goes in, we'll have lots of room for this to sit on top of the insulation and then the carpet. So we don't actually have to worry about that. I'm just more worried if we wanted to put other things down here, we have room, or bring other things up. So realistically, that's fine. We could always drill, little grommets in here if we had to put a little cable down there. But yeah, that'll be totally fine. It's the same deal with this. It's a lot bigger. But yeah, so it might look weird now, but it will look fine when we're done. All right, so first things first, we got to put a end, and luckily we have one. I think that will work. So an end on our main battery cable. Now this is 1 AWG, whatever that is. I don't know if it's gauged the same way as regular wire, but this is 1 gauge. It's really thick, really good for the battery connection to the starter, and should work decent for what we're doing. So let's see if we can fit in there first off. If not, we have a slightly bigger one. All right, so that will definitely work on our battery. So I like soldering everything, but I mean, we can smash these on there. Not a huge deal. We'll just hammer it on here. right, let's get this thing in. I just want to see if it'll go through there first. It will. Good. Get this guy attached to our battery. Okay, let's get this thing sort of lined up here. Okay, so if we look at the starter motor from beneath, let me see if I can zoom in for you guys here. You can see, come on, a prong there, and that's the ignition switch. And then you see this guy with already a cord on it. So we're not using this one. This is not the one we use. We no use for this. This is the one that we want to attach our battery to right back there. So might have to come up with something creative because that one is definitely in the way. So we're gonna have to go around and then attach that rear one there. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna go under there, put our fitting on and tighten it up, and then we'll line it up with our cable from our battery and see how much we need to cut off. All right, so as you can see, can I get my other hand in here? I can. It's at a bit of an odd angle if we wanted it to run it underneath there. So what I'm planning to do is run it just like that, over top. Doesn't make any connections in a weird spot. The rubber insulation that we just put on will also not touch anything, so I think that's safe to put there. And we could try it on the down pike here if I can get my hand in here. Yeah, it just doesn't make sense because it will come lower than the oil pan, kind of like that. So the safest way, I believe, is going to be like that. All right, now that we are hooking up our starter motor, we got to hook up a key. So I made this quick panel. This started off as actually square tubing of aluminum, and I like using the square tubing because if you cut the end off right here, you can see it leaves a nice little edge here, but it leaves a nice rounded corner. So it actually looks really finished and cool. And then I always, well, I shouldn't say always, I usually sand this with about 80 grit and make it that nice kind of raw aluminum finish. So hopefully that'll work out. We're gonna put it right, get out of the way of the camera here, right here, I believe, because we have a piece of bar up there. So yeah, I think that looks pretty cool. And it kind of suits what we're doing here. And it matches our steering column holder, and it's gonna match a couple other little aluminum accents we got going on. So there's that. So let's find out where we want it, drill it, and mount it. Now we can go under here and figure out where we want our fuse panel. So I was thinking about using bolts I already have. So these guys are here. So we could technically put a flat piece and kind of take up this area. I might even be able to bend it and then bend it up so it fits in here pretty good. And we also have these bolts up here. Those are from our radiator supports. So I'm gonna take a minute and just figure out where I want it and where it's gonna be out of harm's way for people's feet. So I mean, nobody's gonna have their feet up here, hopefully, but you know, maybe here. So if we have it in that void, it'll work pretty good. All right, so I did a bit of a rough kind of go with cardboard. And the reason for that is I wanted to see all the angles and get everything working. We also have our distributor cut out back here. And realistically, if I wanted to, I could put about a 30-degree bend in this in the brake and have the whole fuse panel kind of on an angle, which might be a little safer. So that being said, oh, where are the bolts? There they are. We're just gonna trace that into a piece of aluminum and cut it out as best as we can and modify it as we go. Okay, so this is what I come up with. So the reason I went with this notch here is so we can put all 4 bolts of our fuel pressure regulator in the back of our firewall, the ones I showed you, and put all 4 in there. And we still have ample room for everything in here. And we could even kick a, you know, maybe a give or take 30 to 40 degree angle, kind of roll it this way so it will sit not on the firewall like this, but kind of like this, and keep everything out of harm's way. All right, if your workspace doesn't look like this when you're wiring, I don't think you're wiring right, because every time I do it, it's a big mess, and I'm a pretty organized person. So this is really annoying, but it always happens. So I'm gonna, oh, my soldering gun's still on. Do you know Milwaukee makes soldering guns? Very, very exciting. We're doing our 10 gauge from our starter motor to our circuit breaker, and that will give us power to our circuit breaker, and then we can kind of wire everything else in the car. We just need this line, but it's not quite there yet because we haven't done a ground. But I'm gonna do all this first, and then we'll kind of wire everything up and hope for the best. I'm gonna put this on before we put the thing on so I don't have to. Oh well, here we go. Cue the stupid music. All right, let's go run this to our circuit breaker now and see how much we have to cut off. And we'll put another one of these ends on, and then we'll be ready to go in the car and start wiring all the little ones. All right, now that we've got our cord up, we can attach it to our circuit breaker. I still want a little bit of give on it. I don't want it being too tight, so we've got to figure out where we want it, and then cut it and obviously put it to our circuit breaker. And then we can work from everything in this area. We don't have to worry about that anymore. That'll be the only one hooked up right up here. Now we have our main line for power on our fuse panel. I'm gonna go ahead and start wiring our switch just so we can get it all organized. So on our switch, we have starter, ignition, battery, and accessory. So we have to worry about the starter going down to our prong on our solenoid on our starter. Not a big deal. And then our battery, which is right here, is now our line from our circuit breaker. Because if we were to straight line it, it would be, I guess, right from our starter. That gives it power. So instead of going to the circuit breaker, you can go right to this, but instead we went to the circuit breaker first, and then we'll connect the circuit breaker to here. Okay, so we're gonna bridge from right here to here, and this will give that power at all times. And then we're gonna go from here again to our key to give us our battery connection to our key. And then we'll work on going down to our relay here into our key on power fuse box. So this will work all the time. This will only work when the key is on and working through the relay. And then this is our headlight relay, which we'll worry about later. All right, so I did just solder this and thought it was recording, but we essentially cut it to length where we'll have a little bit of length left. So when we suck in our ignition, we'll go back in there and it'll be totally fine. So let's get this guy on. All right, now it would go in there, but we're gonna have to come back tomorrow because it's getting late, and we'll hook up our starter one tomorrow as well as maybe our ignition one to our coil. Okay guys, so it's the next day. We're gonna take our 14 gauge wire now and go from our key to the starter, and then we're gonna also go from the key to the coil, and then we're gonna go from the key accessory to our relay on our fuse panel. That's gonna give us key on power in our key on power fuse box. So I think first things first, follow the main power that we put in yesterday all through the firewall, and then go through that little gap in the firewall down to the starter and attach it to the spade on the starter. All right, so we got all 3 wires down there now. 1, 2, 3, one going to the spade connector. And now we can go in and back to the key and go from the key all the way through our little grommet here to our coil. All right, so you can see the grommet that our oil pressure and water temp lines are going through, and our red lines from our key are going right by it. So if we follow that up to about right there, then we can put our new line right here through the grommet and then to our positive on our coil. Okay, so we have 3 out of the 4 posts on the key wired, and they're all going to their appropriate destinations. The last one, the 4th one, is our accessory port. So that's gonna go back to our fuse box and essentially gonna wire to our relay with this plug. So that will go to this guy here. This will be a ground. This will be power in and power out. So from our key, it'll go to the white guy. This is just a ground, don't worry about that. And then this guy is gonna go to our initial power post, either off our circuit breaker or off the fuse box that's on all the time. It won't really matter, it depends where you wire it. And then this guy is gonna go to our key on fuse box. So let's get that wired up, and then we can start worrying about all the little bitty stuff, lights, so on and so forth. All right, so I'm gonna hop underneath the dash now and wire it all. And it's kind of hard to film, so we'll see in a minute and I'll show you where we get to. So we got our test lamp now, actually vintage snap-on, believe it or not. So we can test all our connections now. So we're gonna test the big one here first. Good. We shut this off. Nothing, good. Up here, yeah, good. Put this back on. Good. Let's turn our key on now to the accessory position. And awesome. Take the key off. And nothing. Perfect. So, gonna clean it up a little bit, but we can start now wiring what we want into our fuse boxes, which is really cool. All right guys, now that we have everything kind of lined up and the wires where we want them and somewhat managed underneath the dash that we can add to, we can go ahead and start putting our toggle switches in. I think each application that my toggle switch will go to is in fact going to be 12 volt all the time, because we have our pump, our fan, and our lights. So I think, yeah, we might as well just do them 12 volt all the time. So I'll pick a slot on our fuse box and run a power line to each one of these guys, and then we'll go from there. So first things first, we got to attach our power line to our fuse, run this up here. I believe this is the off position that I have right now, and that is on, or sorry, other way around. This is off, this is on, so we'll try to mount it like that and see how it goes. All right, so we're just putting the shrink wrap on our power line from our fuel pump and we grounded it. So hypothetically speaking, once we plug this into our switch, it should turn on. So let's get this, the attachment here. We have the fuse in there. Yep. All right, moment of truth. Fuel pump comes on. Sweet. All right, guys, so one down. Fuel pump is on. You can see it underneath there. 2 to go. I'm not going to run the fuel pump much more than that, but 2 more to go. We have headlights. Headlight. I don't know. We'll have to configure it, but headlights and fan. All right, guys, so we're moving on to our fan now. You might realize that we just put another relay in, and this one is going to be for the fan. And I'm going to have to redo all these little things. I'm going to make, I guess, custom little labels for them. But anyways, same deal. This will go to the switch, black to ground, blue to a power source up here probably, and then yellow to the fan positive. So pretty bone simple. We just have to get it done. All right, so we're back to the panel. Just finished wiring our power line to the switch and then back to our trigger wire for our relay. So let's put that in and go test it. All right, I had to put a towel down because all the kind of goo from underneath the sound deadening was getting on my clothes. You can see it all over my shoes and it makes everything sticky. All right, so take our power out, our yellow cable, and we're going to test it. No light. Flick the switch on. And light. So perfect, it's doing its job. Now, we're going to have to wire to the pump, to the fan, but we don't have a fan yet. We have a temporary fan there, but that's not the fan we're going to use. We just ordered a fan, so it should be here any day now. So yeah, we'll wire that up when it comes. But for now, I'm just going to take some tape, wherever my tape went. There it is. And I'm just going to cap that wire just so it doesn't make any contact with anything. It'll be off and the battery will be disconnected, but better safe than sorry. All right, guys, now that we have our switches done for our fuel pump and our radiator fan, we can go ahead and start working on the lights. So a little bit different of a setup. These switches have 2 lines going into it. They have the power in and then the power out to whatever it's going to. So with this one, our headlights, our taillights, and our dash lights, we're gonna have 3 going into, I guess, the power out. So it will go to our taillight running lights, our dash lights, and then our headlight relay. So the reason we're relaying it to the headlights is because the headlights draw a lot more power, and then it won't mess with the rest of the system, being the dash lights, the tack, and the tail lights. So I think I'm going to start with our dash lights just because all my stuff's in here, and then we'll move on to probably the tail lights because that will be the next easiest and least amount of connections, and then we'll go to the relay and the headlights and so on. So, all right, so I'm gonna hop back underneath the dash. It's actually looking pretty organized so far, so good. So yeah, let's get the dash lights working and we'll show you when it's done. Added dramatic effect, I turned off the lights and we can try out our dash gauges. Nice. So now we're gonna go over to the tail lights and connect those to our circuit, and then we'll go up to our headlights and do those. All right, guys, so we got our abundance of wire ready to go up to our fuse panel now, and I changed the wires out, so the white is now black, and the black is now red because it just makes a lot more sense. And then when we come to our brake lights, it'll just be the last wire in there. So let's double check these still work. So ground, power, nice, they're both turning on. So we can now run these wires up to our fuse panel and wire them in. All right, so we got our last cables through the firewall. We can do our power cable to our switch. And then we will do our ground to our basic ground that we have on our fuse panel. There is currently 4 grounds going to it, but not a big deal, it's just a ground. So let's get this tape off and start doing it, and then we'll worry about the loom underneath the dash, because I think this is the last wires we need to put in. So I organized it a little bit with zip ties, but I'd like to get it a little bit more and then use tape, and then we'll put a loom over top of it. So let's get this done and we'll be right back. All right, so turn the light off. We just hooked up our last wire for our running lights on the back, so we can try them out now. So this should turn on everything. Nice, looking good. And running lights are on. All right, let's pull this lens off. So I got a little ahead of myself, just a little too excited, and attached the power into the relay to the main post here where it needs to be on a fuse. So I guess we'll undo all these little zip ties that I made neat and tidy, put a different end on here, and then put a fuse in here so we can run these 2 relays and the accessories. They run off a fuse. Okay. And now we have this all sorted out. So we have our fan and our headlight with 30 amps, and then all our switches are also on the fuse box. I think that's the right way to go. I'm actually not sure. But we have 1 left, which is plenty because I don't think we need any more. And then we have 5 left on the key on as well. So that's always available. All right, guys, here goes nothing. Hopefully they turn on. Nice. Is that both? Looks like both from here. Sweet. Both headlights. Nice. All right, so we're gonna get on to the fan now. And I did buy a new fan, but a 16-inch Flexolite FlexWave is much different than the S-Blade Flexolite. And I could probably run a 14-inch, no problem, but there's not enough CFM in a lot of 14 inches to get what I need. So this is a 2500, I I just said it, S-Blade Flex-Lite fan, 2500 CFM, and it just fits. It fit really good with the old radiator, but we went with a bit of a thicker radiator, and well, I'll just show you. All right, so as you can see, our fan is just a little bit off, so if we press it on and get it kind of set where it needs to be, there's not a lot of room. But when it's all planted, obviously I can't do it with one hand. It allows a little bit more room, but I don't think the engine's gonna go forward, and I don't think the rad is gonna go backwards. If it does, I think we have a bigger issue. So I'm gonna start putting the pins in the 4 points, and then we'll kind of see where that goes. I've now done bullet connectors on our wire that's going to go to our fuse box and went to a ground from here. Once we get these all tidied, I'm going to zip tie them to one of these longer posts that are down in here, and then we'll loom them. So we're going to run this guy now through the grill shell, follow the headlight cord and into the fuse box and get it all set up. All right, up through the firewall. Now I got connected to this relay, and then we're donezo. All right, so I connected the wire and I went a little bit further, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So we put all the wires in a loom, except for the ones in the grill you can kind of see. We'll do that later. But ran them all through here, up here, cleaned up everything, and over to our switches. So that being said, moment of truth, we can flip our middle switch now. And as you can see, I put paper towel there and paper towel there. So that one should push against the grill, where this one should flap up. So moment of truth. Nice. All right, guys, I'm going to call the video there. Thanks for hanging in. If you're still here, I know there's probably going to be a bit longer video from all the content we filmed in the last few days. And let me tell you, that was a long last few days. That was a lot of learning, a lot of looking at diagrams, mostly learning about fuses and kind of wiring setups, what I can use with which, like, for example, my fan, which relay and fuse am I going to use to make it work properly and not, I guess, be an issue. But lots of learning. This is my first kind of full wiring job by myself, creating a fuse panel and so on and so forth. I've used, painless kits in the past, but they're more of a pain than they are painless, because they're a pain in the ass, to be honest with you guys. But this is really simple. Lee's video that I posted at the very beginning of this video, that's in the description below, is fantastic. Really, really good video to go off if you're wiring your car. So really happy it's done. Lights, fan, fuel pump, and all our other wires are ready to go. We still have to wire the alternator and our fuel gauge to our fuel pump, or to our fuel cell, but not a big issue. We'll get that done at a later date. But anyways, guys, thank you again for staying this long. If you saw something you like, dislike, something I can improve on, please comment that below. And while you're there, don't be afraid to hit that like, subscribe, and notifications button so you know when we're uploading. And I appreciate all the support, guys. It doesn't go unnoticed that you guys are following me every week. And our new followers, thank you for joining. It's been an absolute blast to make these videos for you guys. And, I love to every week. So we will see you on the next episode of Wilson Builds. And thanks again, guys.